Okay, let me share my screen. Whiteboard apps, where's the share screen? Okay, can everybody see this?
Yes. Yes.
And it's filling your whole screen? Yes?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Okay, because there's some new laws coming out. And this is what we're going to be going over. The NHD, because the NHD companies are now going to be telling us very clearly, if we need the fire hazard defensible space disclosure. There's a new law that is coming out that's going to do directly affect flippers. As you say, listings and cap and I'll go into more detail when we get to that page. And things like ADUs, environmental reports. There are a couple new landlord tenant, that you may want to talk to your clients about if they have rentals. So the NHD statement, it simplifies the identification of the properties, that the ones that we need the FH fire FFD, that one. So what it's going to be is that on the NHDs, they're going to be having something like this. So if any box is checked yes, then you know that the FHDS form would be required, because right now it's so bloody confusing. It's crazy, and they've simplified it. So a lot of the responsibilities, and excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Because a lot of times there is a difference between what the NHD says, what your local fire department says, and what the state says. So the NHD is being changed, so they will tell us, which was like, woohoo, because then, you don't have to try to figure it out, because right now it's, like I said, it's so confusing. And this is going to be effective January 1st. And again, this is assuming it's a 1 to 4 residential, and they're not exempt from the TDS. Flippers, because this has always been an issue with flippers, because you don't know what they did or who did it and what happened. And so again, this is going to be applying to 1 to 4 residential. TDS is required. And if they are flipping it within 18 months that they sell it, when they sell it, they actually have to disclose in detail, all the repairs were done, if they've done structural modifications, who did it. And they have to supply you with the name and the contact information of the contractor who touched the house if it's over $500. So that way, because until this passes, you have no way of knowing who did it and who to call if you find something wrong with it. And they also have, if any permits were obtained, then any permits obtained have to be provided. Which is like, this is huge for you as an agent, because this alleviates your clients going, well, could you help me look for the permits? Because you can't do that. So this is really going to help us, that we can provide better service to our clients. And if you're on the selling side, if you're on the listing side, this gives you fair warning that you're going to have to collect all of this information, and it needs to be made readily available in the disclosure package. And let me scroll this down a little bit so I can see. Okay. And this one's effective, as it's saying at the bottom of here, July 1st next year. Like a lot of, because I was telling you something just this morning, sometimes when they change the law, it's effective January 1st, and sometimes it's July 1st, depending on when they pass the law. So,
Laura,
yeah,
just a question. Oftentimes, additions are made to the home, like a sunroom or an extended family room, etc. That was done more than 18 months prior to sale. I guess that's exempt from this requirement.
correct. That is correct, because as it's saying up here at the top, watch my finger. You can't see me. Look at my cursor. The seller, from the date when the title was transferred. So that's 18 months. So if it was done 2 years ago, prior to the title being transferred, then that does not fall under this new law. But and the reason this has been done is because, as we all know, a lot of flippers, they'll bring in their own plumbers and whoever's to do the work, and you have no idea who to contact if you find something is wrong, and you don't know if the permits were pulled, because sometimes they don't give you the permits. So now everything has to be disclosed. It's transparency for the buyer.
Hello, Laura.
Yeah, hon.
Hi. At the same time, I feel that the TDS has, in TDS, the seller needs to disclose the repairs and all that's required. So don't you think it will be applicable in that case?
But the TDS does not require you to give you the names and contact information of the contractors.
Okay. No, but for the repairs, like what was done.
Right.
And
yeah, this is making it very, very specific.
Okay. Thank you.
They can't, I didn't know. Yeah, and like I said, because I don't, we always had issues with flippers that the buyer comes back and they say they found something wrong and they don't know who to contact.
Right.
Yeah. What contractor did the work? And also this kind of makes it to the point that, because I'm sure, surprise, that a lot of contractors are doing things not using a licensed contractors. A lot of flippers are doing that.
Yeah.
And now they're going to have to show that a licensed contractor actually did the work, and they're going to have to give you their name and their contact information so you can verify anything, and show you the permits. If work was done, like for instance, it depends in city by city. I mean, like if you're in Davis, California, if you put a ceiling fan in, you have to have a permit. I mean, that's how weird they are out there. But if you're here in San Jose and you put in a new half bath, you have to have a permit to do that. So they're going to have to provide you with the permits to show you that the work was done correctly, because that means that they've been inspected. So that's an advantage for you and the buyers.
Laura, by legal standards, who the flipper who has bought the home previously from other seller, those disclosures, does it need to be also incorporated into or as a part of the disclosures for the new seller?
If I was the seller, I would include everything I had.
Right.
And because that protects you as the seller.
Exactly. Okay, thank you.
Okay, listings have been capped at 24 months, and you're probably going like, well, so, it's like, what are you talking about? And this happened mostly back east, but there was a company that was going out and they were actually targeting senior citizens, and they would go to them and say, they wanted the rights to sell their home when they were ready. And for that privilege, they were giving them money up front. Sometimes it was as little as $300. Sometimes it was $10,000. And it would be a 40-year contract. and they would record this against the house. So, couple years go by and everybody's forgotten about this. And then the parents die and the kids put it on the house on the market and they sell the house. And then these people come in and say, oh, here's our contract. Here's the recording on the house. You owe us the commission. So this
That's
is
terrible.
Yeah, well, some people just have no conscience. So, and originally, when this AB 1345 was originally written, they were going to try to limit it to 1 year contract. And at the legislation day, when we had there, we got the assembly people and the senators were there with us, and for California Realtors Association, and we made it clear that 1 year is just that's too much, and we got them to agree to that 2 years. And people say, oh well, even 1 year is fine, but it's not, because if you're dealing on the commercial side or you're dealing with farmland, it can take a couple of years to sell it. And that's why we had them push it out. And as it's saying here, there is of course, there's always an exception, an exclusive agreements entered with a corporation, LLC, a partnership, whatever you want to call it. It can last longer than 24 months. However, we can no longer do an automatic renewal, and you still can't record. Because there are agents who put in their terms and other terms on the listing agreement that at the end of the agreement, if the house hasn't sold, it's automatically would be renewed for X period of time. Well, they've banned doing automatic renewals, and nothing can extend past the 24 the 24 months. Okay, as I mentioned, any renewal for more than 12 months and it's void. I hope I don't lose my voice during this. Somebody's dream, huh? And again, you can't make a recordation against this. You can't record it. And of course, it's saying here, including 5+ units, regardless of the duration. We don't allow that anymore. Okay, online notarization by California notaries. It's kind of interesting because prior to passing this law, we had out-of-state notaries operating in the state of California. But the Californian notaries could not operate remotely. So in order to make the playing field equal for everybody, they passed the law that we can now do online notaries and do it remotely. They said, like I said, because out of state where people were allowed to do this, the online notary through DocuSign and things like that, but if you were licensed in California, you couldn't do it. So now they've changed the law, and as it's saying here under SB 696, certifies necessary technology, or by 2030, whichever is earlier, that it will be allowed. In the technology features, future security, anti-fraud mechanisms, of course, you're going to have proper identification and verification by a live commissioned notary. And it's asking about what about out of state? Well, out of state notaries already recognized, that's automatic. And as January 1st, 2024, they will receive clear recognition as long as the notary is conducted in accordance with the law of the jurisdiction where the notary is commissioned. Okay, small claims courts. They have increased the small claims court. So natural person, you, me, Long, now it's up to, it's going to be up to 12,500. If you are in LLC, it's going to go from 5,000 to 6,250. And the reason, now, of course, this does not apply to our area, because our prices are so high. The EMD is, I could not imagine an EMD being below 20,000 here, but disputes between buyer and seller, when they cannot be settled, obviously they can go to small claims court now, and they've increased it. So if you're selling a home out in maybe Bakersfield or Tallulah, California, the houses are pretty cheap out there. So the increase allows them, if there's a dispute, you can, instead of going to a full-fledged lawsuit over the EMD, you can actually go to small claims court, and it clears through there faster. And of course, they're reminding people that the CAR contracts exclude from any mediation or arbitration requirement claims within the jurisdiction of the small claims court. Okay. Now, the environmental hazards booklet update. This has not been updated in eons. I can't remember the last time this was updated. So it has 3 new chapters for the wildfire, climate change, and sea level rises. And, it's very obvious why we're talking about wildfires on the environmental hazards. Climate change, I haven't seen one yet, but I'm assuming they're going to be talking about during extreme rains, we can have mudslides and things like that going on. And the sea level rises, yeah. I can relate it not so much to California, but Hawaii, where I have my home. There are homes down in the North Shore area that some of them lost their swimming pools because of the rise in the tides. And it's, slowly eating away at the land. And we've seen it actually over here in Pacifica. The sea level rises and it's getting higher and higher. And that makes, and therefore the waves get bigger and, or go further inland. And that is going to be having an impact. Homes that are currently like slightly below sea level, they're, actually down, I think downtown San Jose might be below sea level, because the land, the water table in the land is rising. And I know in the Davis area, in Davis, California, they have trouble with the foundation sometimes because of that. Because, when it gets hot, the table drops, and when it gets wet, the table comes up, and it cracks the foundations, a lot of the foundations. So they're adding that in there. Sorry. Ugh. And actually, it's giving people kind of like the beware. So you know that maybe today you're fine, but maybe 20 years down the road you might have a problem. And the nice thing about this is that there's no, it's not going to be costing us anymore to have of the update. The state funds are paying for this. So we as an industry are not paying for this. And they have not yet set a deadline as to when this is going to be done. But this is, this is something that's coming down the pike. And I'm actually looking forward to this because it really takes away from us being labored or burdened with the responsibility of dealing with this and explaining this to clients. They can read the report, the updated guide, and be knowledgeable and making their decisions on physically where they are buying their property. It'll be more up to them. ADUs, woohoo! Okay, as we all know, the state has passed a new law, which is AB 1033, that allows you to separately sell an ADU that is on your property. And there are conditions, of course, you have to have, your local, the local ordinances or have to be passed and things like that. And this I didn't know until I saw this, is that the ADU must be transferred as a condominium. Interesting. So that is, I'm going to have to do more research in this because, like I said, that I did not realize it's going to be passed as a condominium, because as is the next point there, right here, is the process to establish the condominium must comply with the Davis-Sterling Common Interest Development Act, HOAs. So I'm going to be looking into what does this mean? If it's going to be a condominium, are they going to have articles of incorporation and bylaws? And this is a little confusing, because all of you, as you know, there's minute meetings, there's CC&Rs. So it's going to be interesting. We're going to have to figure out how this is going to work. And I'm going to be doing more research on this and kind of nail this down before it takes effect, because we don't want to get caught with caught short and not have all the documents that are required.
Also, I believe that maybe, the plumbing and the electricity, the wiring and everything can be separate. It has to be separate or not. We don't know that.
Yeah, it's going to have to be separate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this works. And how the city comes, as is talking, each lien holder must consent to the establishment of the condominium, which may include a demand to pay off the lien or to modify it. And if the property is within an HOA, that the HOA has to approve the creation of the condominium. Where that comes in are your planned developments, like over here in Cupertino, what is it, Seven Springs? That's a planned development. So it's going to be, how do they handle that? And could the HOA, in order to maintain what they perceive as their lifestyle and community, can they get away with turning everybody down? Because as I was saying in the last bullet point, the HOA has to approve the creation of the condominium. And there will probably be, this is going to be a very interesting process that we're going to be going through, because what happens, like I said, like Seven Springs just automatically denies people to create a separate condominium. Are they going to eventually down the line, are they going to get in trouble for violating state law? It's nice that they can now do it, but it's the application of applying this law and the actual doing it. It's going to be more complicated, and I think they're going to have to come out with some more guidelines for all of us, because it's really not quite clear. Anybody have any thoughts on this?
Laura, I was wondering just about the Seven Springs. I don't remember them having a large lots to build ADUs on the first place, but maybe they can attach it to the house or something. Not sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is, you know, because they are small lots, but you know, this is theoretically, you just using them as an example of a
Right.
planned community. Yeah, their lots are pretty small.
Yeah.
But you know, if they had, say they had 10,000, and so, well, in Saratoga, they have an area that their, I think, minimum is like a half an acre.
Yeah, Saratoga has pretty big lots.
Yeah, they have big lots and they have planned developments there. So how does this whole thing work?
Yeah.
So this is going to be interesting. We're going to have to figure out, you know, how we handle this.
Yes, Laura. So yeah, regarding this, I host album house is a new construction. A lot is 8,300. They have ADU 650 square feet, has its own street number and electricity. So regarding this new law, so basically, for buyer side, the buyer can purchase the condo separately, right? Because
Correct.
and then another
Basically,
buyer,
they're splitting a lot.
yeah. So this is confusing. So two buyers will occupy the ADU in the main house.
Yeah, it's lot splitting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's why on this, they're right here, the Subdivision Map Act, you know, which governs the subdivision of property, must also be complied with. So I mean, this is going to be interesting to see
Yeah.
how this shakes out, because I mean, the philosophy behind this and why they want to do this makes sense. I mean, we all know this because, you know, we have such a housing shortage, but the practical application of this is going to be very challenging. And I'm sure that there's going to be things that are going to have to be going to court for the court to decide on, you know, the process and things like that, because it's not, when you look at it practically, there's not a practical process that is clear on how this can be accomplished.
Right.
So this is going to be really interesting. So if you have a client that has an ADU and wants to split it off, get back with me and let me know what the city says. This is going to be, yeah, because like it says here, it's a condominium. So do you have to, if it belongs to a single family home?
Right. Yeah. There's no HOA.
They don't have an HOA. So.
Yeah, they don't have HOA. So how can they just combine these two?
Exactly.
Together? Yeah, that's a little bit weird. But in other states, like Texas, each single home subdivision, they have its own HOA. So HOA there might, you know, regular everything there.
Yeah.
Condo.
This is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, but
I see there's chats in here. Let me see, because I don't normally read the chat. Let me bring this up. See what somebody's asking. Let's see. Somebody's asking about handouts. They were put in the chat. And they were sent out to anybody who was pre-registered. Yeah, everybody's just asking about the handouts. Okay. Yeah, so the application of this, I don't know if anybody has dealt with this in the past, but it's like if you're a single family home and all of a sudden you're transferring it as a condominium, like I said, you know, do you have to come up with all these documents? We're gonna have to, this is going to be interesting. I mean, I'm glad to see this is being done, but we'll have to, this is going to be like one of those processes that we're going to have to learn it as it's happening. And I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of additions and changes to this and new regulation. So we'll all have to pay attention. Okay, so for those of you who have your own rental properties or you have clients who have rental properties, and I will point out that this is LL, which is abbreviation for landlord. We no longer use that term. We use the housing provider. they have changed how much rent, how much can be, because some companies will charge first, last, and deposit. So now you can only collect 1 month's rent over the move-in rent for a deposit. You can't have last month's rent plus a security deposit. It's limited just to 1 month, even if it's furnished. And prior to this passing, and remember, this is on July 1st, prior to its passing, if it was a furnished unit, you could have 2 months worth of security deposit. So that's going away July 1st. If you currently have on your own person, if you have a rental, or you have clients who have rentals, you may want to let them know that this is changing. If they currently have somebody under contract and they have collected last month's rent plus a security deposit, they don't have to give it back. It just, when they get a new tenant, then they will apply this law. Now, and this is
Laura,
for your
this is
big
Allison.
corporations.
Could you
Pardon?
repeat what you said, the last sentence about the rental? Could you repeat?
Okay, say I own an apartment building. And a lot of apartment buildings will take first, last, plus security deposit.
Yes.
Okay, now they can only do first month's rent and security deposit. That's it. Or last month's rent, or today's rent, this current month's rent and last month's rent. They cannot do all three. Now there is an
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Previously, they did all three. Okay.
Yeah, they can't do all three. Now, there's an exception to this, as they're putting in there, what they call small landlords. They can collect 2 months' rent in addition to the first month's rent, even if furnished. And it defines right here, they own no more than 2 residential properties, and together including no more than 4 units. So if you have a client that owns, like 5 homes, they're not a small landlord. They're going to be bound by AB 12. If you have a client or you have just 1 rental, then you're exempt.
Oh, by the way, can I ask you, if supposing someone has a rental, just one single family home rental property, do they have to register with the county or the city as a landlord?
No,
They don't, right? Okay.
no. And they're giving some good examples here, because it says a family trust can qualify as a small landlord as well as an LLC, as long as every member of the LLC is a natural person. And what they're talking about here is because some people, they've tiered everything down. So they have a corporation, and they'll have an LLC for each individual property. So this law it applies to them. Now, if they have a trust and they have an LLC where they put 2 properties in the LLC, then they are exempt. And of course, we put in here, also in here, for even for small landlords, if the prospective tenant is a service member, the security deposit is limited to 1 month's rent. So to sum it up, if you have like 5 units or more, then AB 12 is going to apply to you. If you have 4 or less, you are exempt, unless you have a family trust that has a corporation, and the corporation has an LLC that the house is titled, that holds title on the house, then you are bound to the AB 12. And if you're renting to a service person, someone who's in the military, regardless, you're limited to 1 month's rent. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Yes? No? I heard one person say yes. Yes. I think we've got like 16 people on the call. Everybody paying attention? Is everybody alive?
Yes.
Oh, and here's the what I was talking about. If you're currently holding, deposit, or those who demand or collect a security deposit in excess of 1 month's rent prior to them may retain the security deposit even though it's more than 1 month's rent. So like I said before, what you're saying is, if you're currently, you have more, you're fine, you don't have to give the money back, but when you re-rent it, then you have to abide by the new law. Okay, and this is important also. This is a new one. And again, I'm assuming that none of you are property managers because that would be against your contract with us. So this is for you, or if you can advise your clients who have rental properties that the ability to pay screening instead of credit history for Section 8 tenants, because a lot of people were turning away Section 8 tenants based on the fact that they had bad credit or they had a bad history credit. Well, they can turn around and say, I do have the ability to pay for this. And they can show that they have government subsidy, and you have to include that in their ability to pay. So if on the tenant application, as is talking right here, if a tenant application elects to have their application reviewed based on the ability to pay, then we have to allow a reasonable time for the tenant to provide alternate evidence, because we all know that the government moves slowly as a snail, even if you have to show them something, because they will have to contact the housing authority and ask for verification and proof, documentation that they are receiving X amount of funds. Now, if you have a friend who's under Section 8 and they're going to be looking for a new place to live, they would want to, the best thing they could do is get that ahead of time before they start looking. And it's saying in here, the alternative evidence may include government benefit payments, pay records, bank statements, things like that. And it has to be reasonable, because you must reasonably consider this information. Now, this sentence in itself, the tenant need only show a reasonable ability to pay. What is reasonable? This is where this new regulation is going to be having problems, because it's really interpretation. So if you have clients that are home providers, or you have rentals yourself, be very, very careful with this. Because if someone from Section 8 turns you into the housing authority saying that you're not reasonable, or, and I hate to say this, there are people out there that have joined with an attorney, and they will go out and they will basically, they're trying to set you up to get sued. So be very, very careful with this type of situation. When in doubt, make sure that you have criteria in writing, that you can say that your income needs to show the ability to pay. You have to, have a certain income, or, your bank or banking, you just sit down and figure out how you're going to create something that would be reasonable and have it in writing in case you're ever challenged. Because that's where a lot of people fail to protect themselves by not having the criteria in writing. So you may want to show that income includes what they're making at their company and what their subsidized funds are. Combined together is the income, and you have, you know, ratio of income to debt or things like that. You got to be very, very careful with stuff like this, because this is open to interpretation. And when something is open to interpretation, there are people, like I said, there are people out there that are looking to take advantage of this. So be very careful.
Hi, Laura. I ran into this situation before.
Have you?
Yeah, two times when I put my rental on the market, both times I have people contacting me saying that, do I accept
Section 8.
Yeah, and because I don't know what that is at the time. and I
Section 8
didn't
is
know.
subsidized housing, and for your, if somebody ever asks you that, don't ever say no.
Oh, I don't say no.
You know, that's against the law.
Then what should I say?
All you say is, I currently do not participate in this. However, you can send your application in, and if you qualify, then we'll go ahead and work with it.
Oh, but I have no knowledge about that. How can I qualify them?
Well, that's what I was saying. This is the hard part, because Section 8 is that they're getting their housing expenses, their rent expenses being subsidized by, usually it's the housing authority, and it's against the law to turn somebody down because they're a Section 8. That falls under the fair housing law.
I see. I didn't turn them down directly. I just say that I'm not familiar with that. And then one person, she started to argue with me. And I don't even know how to argue with her because I don't know the exact content.
Well, that's good that you said you didn't know what it was.
Yeah, and then she just went away.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, don't ever say no.
Okay.
We've already in the past have settled the lawsuit because somebody said no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, be
For
very,
telling
very
me.
careful. Oops, where did it go? Yeah, it's there are people out there that just, lawyers are out there just waiting for somebody to say no. Because it can cost you a lot of money. Okay, and here we go again. I'm sorry if I sound cynical, but you know, I advise clients not to buy rental properties in California, because I mean, this is again taking away some of the owner's rights. Effective April 1st, they're tightening up the requirements for a home provider to terminate the tenancy under the Tenant Protection Act. So under the Tenant Protection Act, if you're not familiar with it, this is the no fault eviction issue based on the homeowner moving in or substantial remodeling. Well, they have tightened that up because obviously some people were not telling the truth. They were buying the property and they said, well, we're moving in, and then they don't. They just told the tenant they were moving in to get rid of the tenant so they could up the rent. And some people were saying, oh, well, remodeling your kitchen, so you have to move out. You know, things like that. So they've actually tightened it up. So, and yeah, improper termination. Yeah, so if you're found guilty of this, now, and let me qualify this, if you substantial remodeling, if for instance you're going to be doing something that requires the heat to be disconnected for a month, or the water for a month, or something like that, you could probably get away with saying that this is substantial remodeling. Or if you're, it's, again, this is the definition of substantial remodeling. What is that? What does that mean? So be very careful with this, and your clients need to be very careful. Because if you were found guilty, it's not just the actual damages. You're going to get attorney's fees. You're going to be paying out attorney's fees, and 3 times the actual damages for willful violations. Now, what this means, if you say, I'm buying this for my daughter's going to move in, and that was all a lie, because as soon as they closed, a month later, a new tenant moves in, that is willful violation. And so it could be 3 times, treble the actual damages. And punitive damages. So it's like they were emotionally distraught, and you have caused them emotional distress, and yada, da, 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 da. That will add to the damages. That's punitive damages. And the AG is authorized to seek relief from you. So be very careful with this. I mean, this is when you are dealing with clients who are buying income property and there's already a tenant in there, they need to be very, very careful, because like I said, you can't, because these people will keep track. Believe me, if you evict a tenant because you said that you're buying this house for your daughter, and then somebody else moves in, they're going to come after you. And it's going to cost you a boatload of money. Oh my goodness, look at the time. Oh, gotta talk faster. Okay, and again, no fault eviction. So I'll let you read through this, because I really want to get to down here. So read through this carefully, because I want to point out this is okay. All right, so we're done with this one. I'm going to stop. Where is my stop sharing? I'm going to close this out. Yeah, just go through that and read it very carefully. We have 2 new, where did they go? Sorry, I'm gonna have to try to find them where I put them. Okay. We have 2 new guides that are in the handout. And let me see where I put them. Share screen. Okay. Okay. Can you guys see this? Buyer's representation agreements. This is a revised guide.
Yes.
New guide on the buyer's representation agreement, which all of you should be working on how to present this and how to get clients to sign it. So read through this. This is pretty good information that they have in here. And the other one, if you can see, are you seeing this? The balcony inspection laws? Hello?
We're seeing the buyer representation agreement.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, let me close this guy out. Share the screen. Oh, this is, there we go. Here we go. But you're seeing that now, balcony inspection.
Yes.
Okay, this is very important to read through this. If you go to the was it Adam Sterling webpage, there's videos on this, because this is the balcony inspections. And if you're dealing with a buying into a unit that is in an HOA, that's like in a big complex or something, this is really, if they have not already started in this could be a real big red flag, especially if they have, because I know that there's a big condominium complex off of Stevens Creek in Norwalk. I think it's Norwalk and Saratoga Avenue, right in that area. And one of the HOAs have not kept up the maintenance on the buildings, and a lot of the balconies have been red tagged. So now we're talking about a lot of money. And there's probably going to be special assessments. So please read through this so you're familiar with it. You know, because I really want to spend the last few minutes that I have with you guys going over. Hang on.
Because there's possible loss of life with the balcony.
Yeah, for those of you who
Huge.
don't know, there were two incidences. One of them, this last one, was in Berkeley, and some students were out on the balcony I think on the 5th floor, and the balcony gave way, and 7 of them died. I think most of them were foreign students. So are you seeing the conditions and contingencies?
Yes.
Good. I'm never sure how this thing is, just makes me wild. Okay. And can you read it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Basically, you know, because a lot of people, I read contingencies that people have written in, and it's like, what? When is this supposed to, you know, it's not complete, and that can cause, and it always causes, not always, but so many times it causes so many problems. I just want to, you know, it's just like you just want to tear your hair out. So I wrote this up to help people understand how to write a proper contingency, because you have a condition. So that's the what's being done, right? And a contingency, you know, is it's a provision, it's something that you add into the contract, and that's something that has to be done, or if something has to occur, and the parties, you know, need to be satisfied about the whole thing. And you know, the contingency gives the party, it also gives the party, one of the parties, whoever the contingency is written for, it gives them the right to renegotiate and or cancel the contract. So this is why it's very important that you learn, that you know how to write a proper contingency. And we've got 4 minutes, because I don't want to take into your lunch, but I try to keep under an hour. I hate this. So I've given, you know, read through this a little bit more carefully, but I've given an example of how you draft a contingency. Okay, an example. You know, at buyer's expense, buyer will have the foundation expected by one or more professionals of buyer's choice. Buyer shall have 7 days from mutual acceptance of this offer to conduct said inspection and to review the inspection report. Okay, if buyer does not disapprove the inspection report in writing within the 7 specified, this is days specified above, buyer will be deemed to accept the condition of the property. So the blue is the condition. The purple is the contingency. It's the satisfaction of the contingency. So I kind of broke this down. Okay. The basic contingency is the sale is subject to a professional inspection of the property. But who has to act? So it's subject to the buyer's approval. The buyer has to approve the act. And it shows you how you kind of grow it. So it's very solid. So you get more specific, all the elements and systems thereof on the grounds at buyer's sole expense. So now you know for certain the buyer is paying for all of this. And it goes to not just the whole property, the elements and the system. So, you know, if they have a pool or, you know, whatever that they maybe have extensive water features and yada, da, 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 da. And when the contingency has to be satisfied. So we added on to this, on or before 7 business days from mutual acceptance of this agreement. So once the contract is ratified, the time starts ticking. And then what it happens if it is, this is how do you remove the contingency? So you add on to this that if the buyer fails to give written approval before the end of the contingency period, this transaction shall become void, and the earnest money deposited in this transaction shall immediately be returned to the buyer. So this tells you, oh, I'm sorry, I read the wrong paragraph. So in here, we added that the buyer's written approval. So it tells you how the contingency is going to be removed, waived, or satisfied. And then down here, what are you going to do if the contingency is not satisfied? So this tells you how this is going to happen. So you have to build it so it's very clear. This is what's being done, who's responsible, who's paying for it. How is the contingency removed or canceled or waived? And what happens if the contingency is not satisfied? All of that creates a complete contingency. So it's a lot wordier, but if I went to court and all of it says the sale is subject to a professional inspection of their property. Okay, who's going to buy it? Who's going to pay for it? When does this need to be done? You forget it, because that's not a whole contingency. So you need to be careful when writing these, so it is crystal clear on what the contingency is, and break it down. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Yes. So Laura, where do you expect us to be writing this, in additional addendum or additional terms? Where exactly?
Usually
all this
I'll see these on an addendum.
addendum. Okay.
Yeah.
Because the purchase agreement only has place to specify number of days for contingencies, and there is an additional term. So where exactly would you
Yeah,
write?
additional terms usually, yeah. But say for instance, you want to make it specifically, say you're buying horse property, and you want this specifically you're going to be inspecting the arena, the horse building, the equipment and things like that. So it's not it's not the house, it's actually the buildings and structures around accommodating horses. Or you could use something like this if you're not sure you want to build an ADU, or not an ADU, say you want to build another structure, another house on the property or whatever, or you want to add a pool. Well, you don't know if you can. And sometimes, because you don't know if there might be an endangered species running around somewhere on the property. And then you can't build because you're going to be, heaven forbid, you're going to, disrupt their environment. You don't know. So you want the time in order to be able to satisfy do your investigation and then satisfy it or not, and be able. So if you're going to want to build like a horse arena, well, maybe the city has, they have, it has to be, put on certain, your land has to be so big to put on this building. And if you want to house 5 horses, then the structure has to be minimally this big. Can the property accommodate it? Do you have the right water? Things like that. That's important stuff. You want to have the time. So if the property, even though it's gorgeous, doesn't meet your requirements, you can walk away.
Okay. So basically this has to be in addendum with explicit language.
Very explicit.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Yes, can I ask a question, Laura?
Yeah.
Yeah, so regarding this one, the last paragraph, okay, so basically the buyer fails to give a written approval. It doesn't mean that this contract will go automatically effective.
If it's written this way, if the buyer
they were not, they failed, basically they forgot. So
if they forgot, they're out of luck.
so basically how can we identify that this purchase agreement just go effective?
If the purchase agreement, yeah, well, you need to understand,
Mhm.
this is contract of law. This is contract law. And the law doesn't care if you forgot.
Mm. Well, so if they fail to give written approval,
Then the contract becomes void.
okay. But still, they can have the right to get the deposit back.
Correct. That's the, according to how this was written, yes.
Okay, got you. Thank you.
Yeah. The law doesn't, the law is very black and white. If you forget, then that's tough luck. It's a void contract. Because that's the way it was written. And you can, and this is what is called a passive. A passive approval would be, say, if it says, if buyer fails to give written approval before the end of the contingency period, it is considered that the buyer has accepted the conditions of the property. And the transaction will continue and move forward.
Yeah, that's what I'm my understanding.
It depends on, no, it's not a matter of understanding, it's a matter of how it is written.
Okay.
The way this is written, this contingency was constructed. If they don't give written approval, then the contract is void. Now, if you change the wording and says, if the buyer does not, if the buyer does not give written disapproval, or the buyer, if the buyer does not give disapproval of the inspections within this certain period of time, then it is considered the buyer has accepted the property as is, or something like that. And the contract will move forward. The transaction will move. It's all depends on how you word it. But you have to be able to say, this, you have up here, it says that the buyer will give written approval. You could say that the buyer is subject to the buyer's approval. You would have to construct it saying that if buyer does not disagree with inspections, then it is considered that the buyer accepts the condition of the property and the transaction will move forward.
Laura, question is, if the buyer has not removed the contingency, does it automatically means that they're moving forward? They have to remove the contingency, correct?
It depends on how you write the contingency. Right here. Okay, if buyer does not disapprove the inspection report in writing that's a typo of mine, sorry. Within the 7 days specified above, buyer will be deemed to accept the condition of the property. That's called a passive removal.
Okay. But if we are not drafting this, then it's automatically that the buyer has to remove the contingency in order to move forward.
The way this is written, if they do nothing, the transaction moves forward.
Right. Okay.
This is called a passive.
Okay.
Whereas down here, this is a non-passive. They actually have to give written approval.
Right.
Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Any more questions? God, you guys are so quiet today. Is everybody having a hangover from eating too much yesterday?
I'm just a little under the weather.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I woke up with an elephant standing on my face this morning with my sinus.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before I close up, does anybody have any more questions?
So a quick question about the timeline. So if the buyer presents the offer on, say, today's what, 11th, and the seller accepts it on 14th,
Then the 14th is day 0.
day 0, yes. But we have up to 3 days for
If the contract says 7 days, then it's 7 days. 14, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the 21st would be the 7th day.
7th day. And so, but the buyer presented offer on 11th, and
It doesn't make any difference on when it's
That's-
presented. It's when it is ratified.
that's right. But whether the contract will hold good on 14th, if it is presented on 11th, accepted on 14th,
Then the clock starts ticking on the 14th.
taken on the 14th. But will the contract be still valid on 14th was my question. Because
It depends on
days-
how long you gave them to ratify the
Three.
contract.
3 days.
If you presented it on the on the contract,
11th.
on your purchase contract, you should be giving them a deadline as to when they have to accept it by.
Within 3 days.
By what time?
5 p.m.
Right, so if they don't meet that, then the contract is not valid. It's
valid. Okay. So if it is presented on 11th, if we receive it on 14th, will that still be
at
considered?
6 p.m., it's gone.
Okay. Okay,
But
so
that's
11 to
that's why
14.
timing is very, very important. And
Exactly.
I like to use dates.
Dates.
I prefer using a date. You know, you have until the 14th at 5 o'clock. Boom. So there's no
Okay.
question about is it the 13th or the 14th or the 15th? You know, that's why I always use dates, even for closing
Dates.
escrow.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to have an escrow date, close of escrow on Monday or Friday, because that's when the holidays. Mondays, there's a lot of holidays. Fridays, they stop recording at noon.
Noon. That's right. That's right.
So I always try to plan it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So
Sure.
that's why the use of dates is very, I like using dates because I'm
Dates.
very anal about stuff like that.
That's right. So I know the default is 3 business days.
Yeah, it depends on, like I said, when it's ratified, when you give the drop dead and when it's ratified. Okay.
Sure. Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I hope
Thank you so much.
Time. I know I had to rush it through some of this because we were running out of time.
Thank you,
No.
Laura.
Thank you, Laura. But it was a lot of information. It will
Thank
definitely
you.
take
Very
some time to
helpful.
go through it.
Yeah. Go through the information.
That's true.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.